I'd like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners Workshop Meeting for September 8, 2021. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Lees.
Here.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Here.
So we have a special evening tonight for a number of different reasons. Probably one of the top two reasons for sure is to honor our emergency responders who helped us during this recent hurricane. And I'd like to ask if you would all rise and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Just get started and we'll all follow you.
Public for which?
So the folks who just led us in the Pledge of Allegiance are our volunteer fire companies, Hatfield and Calmer Fire Companies, and we are going to we're going to have a big thank you in just a few minutes about that. We have a couple of housekeeping items that we have to go through first, and then we will jump right to that. Okay, is there approval? Is there a motion for approval of tonight's agenda? Motion by Commissioner Andrus, second by Commissioner Lees. All in favor of approving the agenda that's before you, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Forward, citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments on agenda items? Okay, not seeing anyone. We're going to go to the consent items. Is there a motion to move into the record the consent items that are listed in your agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lees.
Second.
Second by Vice President Rogers. Those items include the HTMA budget report for July 2021, the police report for August 2021, the North Penn Water Authority meeting minutes for July 27, 2021. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of moving those into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Okay, folks. Before we have our thank you, we're going to have a moment of silence here. Many of you, probably all of you, realize that 20 years ago this Saturday, September 11th took place. And so we wanted to take some time out of tonight's meeting to just reflect on that a little bit. And so as a board, we put together some thoughts, but also a little bit of a restatement of what took place that day, just so that we're never, lest we never forget and that we always remember. And so we think it's important to briefly remind ourselves of the events of what took place on what is really one of the saddest days in American history. So if you bear with me, on September 11, 2001, 19 militants hijacked 4 airplanes and carried out suicide attacks on the targets inside the United States. 2 of the planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. 3rd plane hit the Pentagon just outside Washington, D.C., and a 4th plane crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Almost 3,000 people were killed during 9/11 terrorist attacks. On September 11, at 8:45, on a clear morning, an American Airlines Boeing 767 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. That impact left a gaping, burning hole near the 80th floor of the 110-story skyscraper, instantly killing hundreds of people and trapping hundreds more. As the evacuation of the tower and its twin got underway, 18 minutes after the first plane hit, a second plane hit, United Airlines Flight 175. It turned sharply towards the World Trade Center and struck the South Tower near the 60th floor. As millions watched these events unfold in New York, American Airlines Flight 77 circled over downtown Washington, D.C. before crashing into the west side of the Pentagon military headquarters at 9:45 a.m. All told, 125 military personnel and civilians were killed in the Pentagon, along with all 64 people aboard that airliner. Less than 15 minutes after the terrorists struck the Pentagon, the horror in New York took a catastrophic turn when the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed in a massive cloud of dust and smoke. At 10:30 a.m., the north building of the Twin Towers collapsed, and only 6 people in the World Trade Centers at the time of that collapse actually survived. Meanwhile, a 4th California-bound plane, United Flight 93, was hijacked after leaving Newark Airport. Because the plane had been delayed in taking off, certain passengers on board learned of the events in New York and Washington via cell phone calls to the ground. Knowing that that aircraft was never going to return to the airport as the hijackers claimed, a group of passengers and flight attendants planned an insurrection. And at that point, a number of heroes were born. One of the passengers, Tom Burnett Jr., told his wife over the phone that I know we're all going to die. There's 3 of us who are going to do something about it. I love you, honey. And another passenger, Todd Beamer, was heard saying, "Are you guys ready? Let's roll," over an open line. The passengers fought the 4 hijackers and are suspected to have attacked the cockpit with a fire extinguisher. The plane then flipped over and sped towards the ground at approximately 500 miles per hour, crashing in a rural field near Shanksville in western Pennsylvania at 10:10 a.m. All 44 people aboard were killed. Its intended target is not known, but theories include the White House and the U.S. Capitol. All told, a total of 2,996 people were killed in the 9/11 attacks. Citizens of 78 countries died in New York, Washington, D.C., and here in Pennsylvania. At the World Trade Center, 2,763 died. That figure included 343 firefighters and paramedics, 23 New York police officers, and 37 Port Authority police officers who were struggling to complete an evacuation of the building and save the office workers trapped on higher floors. At the Pentagon, 189 people were killed. On Flight 93, 44 people died when that plane crashed in Pennsylvania. Saturday will be 20 years since that day, and we thought it was important to go through the facts of that day to remember it so that we never forget it. Those of us who were old enough to remember know exactly where we were, know what we were doing, and who we were with when the terrible news came in. Seems we all knew someone who was killed or directly impacted. For me, a high school friend and family member, Dennis Cook, will always be remembered as having been killed in the South Tower while working for Cantor Fitzgerald. And there's thousands of memories like that, some of which we shared before this meeting amongst ourselves, and thousands of family members who have lost loved ones that day. And so tonight, we take a moment to remember those we lost on September 11, the families of those who died and whose lives were irreparably damaged, and the fire and police who selflessly ran into those buildings to save others, knowing that they may never come out. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. So while somber, ironically or otherwise, we're not sure, tonight we are surrounded by first responders. So we have our own Hatfield heroes with us tonight, and we wanted to say thank you, and that's because of the wonderful work that has taken place during Hurricane Ida's response. So we have the volunteers, and I can't stress that enough, the volunteers of the fire companies, Hatfield and Calmer, with us. And of course, Chief, your entire staff was on call that evening and ready to, and actually not just ready, but jumped in and worked the evening as well, the entire day. It was an unprecedented event for us, and that's why we want to come in and say thank you. You probably know this, but Hurricane Ida dropped an average of 8.25 inches of rain throughout Montgomery County in a very short period of time. It brought about devastation, flooding, and more than 452 water rescues in the county, surpassing a previous record of 135. In Hatfield alone, there were 20 water rescues. That's you guys. That's you, men and women from Hatfield and Calmer. There were 20 water rescues, numerous investigations, and 1 reported building fire during that event. However, even though Ida was fierce, the response from you was unprecedented, swift, and efficient. We always see your training at work, but we really saw the training become abundantly clear that night. So tonight, as I mentioned, we have members from Calmer and Hatfield. These volunteers saved lives, provided relief, and assisted with countless residents who needed help during the flooding. They're joined by Hatfield Township Deputy Fire Marshal Mike McCann, and the entire Public Works Department, and Chief Tierney and his team of officers are also a part of our recognition tonight as well. On behalf of the entire township, we want to say thank you. For the residents, we would say thank you. The board, we say thank you. The township staff, we say thank you. And this community to you is grateful not just for what you did during Ida, but what you do every day whenever the bell rings. And so please know that you have our warmest thanks and appreciation. You also have this board's full commitment to repurchase those pieces of equipment that might have been damaged during the hurricane. And tonight, inviting you to our meeting is just a small way of saying publicly, we recognize what you do. We know that you do it because you love to do it and you're serving your community. You're not getting paid for it. There's very little fanfare or no fanfare whatsoever. You're doing it because you're looking out for your fellow neighbor, and there's not a lot of that in this world today. And so we want to thank you. So on behalf of the board, we want to recognize you, thank you, and we can't, our best wishes for you and your entire family. So thank you. Might be even easier to take it that way.
I was pretty excited about it. Have to.
Actually, I'm short enough to be this guy. Thank you, guys.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jeff.
Sure. Publicly or right over to the podium? You can speak right to the... Want us to stop them from running away?
Want the guys to hear you?
Hey, Brian, Neil's going to tell a joke or something. You guys might want to hang out.
Okay.
Is this on? Yeah, okay. You all heard about 9/11, and we knew where we were at that time and didn't realize it was happening, but it did. And after all the cleanup and whatever you have, the one airplane, that number 4th airplane that was late taking off, that crashed in Pennsylvania, where the passengers took over that airplane, beat the door in, so that airplane would not make Washington, D.C., which they're sure of it was going to go, to either the Capitol or the White House. One thing planned, it was definitely going to go to Washington. But afterwards, my job happened to be a crew chief for the military at Willow Grove Air Reserve Facility for the United States Air Force Reserve. I crewed the C-130, that's the 4-engine turboprop. And after this happened, they decided to pick an airplane, more than one. There was 4 airplanes picked out to put decals on the side of the crew entrance door on the pilot side, the left side. And mine was chosen to put the decal on for the one for Flight 93 that crashed where the people took over. And on the decal was written, "Let's roll." And I'm so proud of that. And just want to let you know that other people understand what happened and still should not forget that day. And that's been 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Neil Franklin from the Calmer Fire Company. I'm not promoting myself, but this is my 37th year.
Nice.
And so, got one more to go. I have 12 years with a little town up along the river, Upper Black Eddy, which was flooded a little bit this hurricane. I had 12 years there, so I hope I make one more year, and that'll give me a total of 50 years in the fire service. That's what I'm looking forward to, and hope I can go more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
$50. I think we should have you back. 25 more years.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. All right. Those were our special items for the evening. We're going to jump into our committee report. The room emptied out quite a bit. We're down to 2. Let's start with Planning and Zoning Committee, Vice President Rogers.
Thank you. The first item isn't on the agenda, but I would like to make a request to the staff to please take a look at pursuing a study of the stormwater problems throughout the township and come up with a plan to try to fix them, address them.
Sure, no problem, Mr.
I think
Vice
that's
President.
important. This is probably the second year that I can think of in the last several years. A lot of devastation in the township.
If I can add to that, I'm sure each commissioner can probably identify an intersection or a location. I know I've got 2 to add to that. If a study's going to be done, I have a couple of locations I'd like to have added. Winston, I'm telling them now, Winston and Leon,
Sure,
2 different roads.
sure. No, and I think, Mr. Vice President, I'm just writing these down, I think it would make sense, given that in Commissioner Andrews over the years, we initiated $50,000 a year from the budget to chip away at these problems. And we are luckier than some towns, but everyone knows that Hatfield is very flat and water doesn't have many places to go. So it would make sense to do something on a larger scale with a professional consultant to give us a long-term plan to start addressing them instead of just putting out fires as we go. So I think, Vice President, that's a great idea. We could talk about it more during our budget and goals meeting coming up next month, and then hopefully put something in the budget for you.
Sounds good.
Good suggestion.
I think that works out well with the water retention basins that we're looking at. I think it's an opportunity for us to really clean up some of the issues.
Great idea.
Something out too, the residents can help us out, help Public Works out by cleaning their storm drains, by getting all the leaves. Especially when you know that it's storms.
Suggestion.
Okay, the other item is a small cell wireless facility regulations, a zoning ordinance. Mr. Amy, you have this?
Thank you, Commissioner. We wanted to talk to you this evening about an act that was passed by Pennsylvania. It's Act 50. It was passed in late June, took effect in, I think it was August 27th. It actually took effect. And what this act does is it addresses small wireless facilities. We're all used to cell phones and cell phone towers. We've all been dealing with them for 30 years or so. And we're used to seeing towers that are 80 to 120 or 100 or 200 feet tall. And those towers had enough bandwidth to carry voice messaging and some data transmission for a number of years. What's happened since, really since mid-teens, 20 teens, we've seen more and more data transmission on wireless facilities. And the traditional tower network with the macro sites just doesn't work. It doesn't handle enough volume of data. So the new technology now is smaller wireless facilities, and they're small antennas, roughly 12 to 18 inches in diameter, 3 to 4 feet tall. They mount on your utility poles that are already in place. They mount on light poles, on telephone poles, electric poles, and are placed much closer together than the old macro sites, but they allow a more seamless transfer of data across them. So instead of one site handling area of Hatfield, I believe we have about 5 different cell towers in Hatfield. Do a pretty good job of handling our day-to-day data transmission, but as more and more people are sending more and more data across those lines, cell phone companies are looking at ways to get more data out, and that's where these small cell. So what the Act does, what Act 50 does, is it standardizes the way these small towers are regulated throughout the state. So throughout Pennsylvania, they'll be dealt with uniformly from municipality to municipality, from city to city. Only discretion that's left for us is with permitting. We have a little bit of discretion as far as design guidelines, and we have some discretion as far as locating them within areas that have underground utilities. In order to exercise that discretion, and in order to allow us to put those kinds of regulations into effect, we need to amend our zoning ordinance to address those kinds of regulations that the Act provides for. The reason we brought it in this evening is that there is a 60-day period from the time the Act became effective for municipalities to enact those changes. Otherwise, we have to comply strictly with whatever was passed by the state. So we have until October 28th to pass those regulations. What we'd like to do is get a consensus from the board to move forward with a draft to bring back to you on the 22nd, and hopefully get authorization to advertise and to send to our local planning commission and the Montgomery County Planning Commission, so that you would be able to enact it at your meeting on the 27th of October, so that we would hit the deadline by a day. As I say, we don't have a lot of discretion. There's not a lot of regulation that we can put in effect, but we can do more than what the Act 50 regulations provide. It seemed to the staff that we ought to take that opportunity and do just that. If the board agrees, then we'd work with the solicitor's office, come up with a draft, bring it back to you on the 22nd, and hopefully get authorization to advertise.
So in other communities, I believe they were going into the right-of-way between the curb and the sidewalk, and actually putting up some antennas and stuff like that.
These all deal with installations within the right-of-way. And the one thing I didn't mention is that we are permitted to charge permit fees, and we're also permitted to charge a maintenance fee. So we can charge an annual fee for allowing those antennas to be located within township rights-of-way. That's another provision that would be in.
Question, Ken. How does it affect the service when one of these poles is hit by a vehicle, as Chief and I can attest, they're hit all the time? Have a lightning strike or an electrical fire on a pole, how is that going to affect this? Change the availability of wireless for people?
There's enough redundancy in the system that we're not going to go down if one is hit, and up to the provider to come in. Most of these that are being installed by companies that do nothing but install these, and then they charge a rental fee to Verizon and T-Mobile and such. So those companies, Crown Communications is one of the big ones. There are 3 or 4 in the market. Those companies would be responsible for maintaining.
Is there any issue with RF energy being emitted from those antennas to our residents?
Not from what we've been told, not from what came up during the hearings in the.
Thank you.
Where do they get their power source from?
They're connected with fiber optic cable.
So like many of our utilities, do we have enforcement to make sure they do it right? For example, Aaron and I talked about a Comcast box in my neighborhood that's sticking 2 inches above the grass line. Do we have any authority, power to do anything to make sure they do the job right and leave it as it should?
Don't know how much authority we have over the installation. Something we can talk and Kristen about to see what if any authority we have. We are going to be able to permit the installations. So I would assume that if the installation isn't up to snuff, that we could withhold permit.
Larger towers, don't they pay rental fee to the landowner? Not for these.
They'll pay a maintenance fee. So we can
That doesn't
charge.
sound nearly as much as a rental fee.
Well, it's going to add up quickly, because we can charge, under the Act, we can charge up to $270 a year per antenna, and there are a lot of antennas put in once.
Are those companies considered a utility?
Yes. That was a big fight between the utility companies and municipalities. Municipalities didn't want them to be classified as public utilities.
So is there some discussion, or maybe this is premature, of taking down the monster towers, which would become obsolete if a township like us has a sufficient number of these throughout its town?
I don't believe so. It's not in any plans that I've seen so far. That'll be part of the redundancy in the system.
Well, we don't have to make a decision tonight for sure. What Ken's asking us is if there's a consensus to give the staff the opportunity to draft regulations that we would want associated with an approval of this, right? Is it the easiest way to
Correct.
describe it?
Correct.
But there's a timing sequence, and it sounds like the state gave us a whopping 60 days. So we appreciate that. And so in order to get that done, we would need to give authority this evening so that you could present. And for those who are following the process, they would be presented to us for consideration, and then at our next meeting, we would vote on publication of the ordinance, which would then give us just enough time to make a decision one way or the other before the 60 days expire.
We'd have 30 days to send it to the County Planning Commission, which is what they allow us to take it to our Township Planning Commission.
Okay.
All that could be accomplished before your October 27th meeting.
For clarity, whatever they come up with has to be really good.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of,
You don't have any time to make any revisions.
Yeah, and Commissioners, just keep in mind, whether you like it or not, or whether residents like it or not, this technology is coming. So it's considered a utility, it's legal. The commissioners have a very little ability in every local government in PA, a little ability to add regulations on top of what the state has already provided, but very little, and you'll see that in the draft.
Whatever comes next month will be something we have to adopt.
Correct, and even what is adopted isn't going to be life-changing. The residents have to understand that these small cells are coming. The more we use this, the more reason that they're going to be here, and they're going to be everywhere. They're already in many cities and towns and locations. Eventually, they'll be in Hatfield.
all right, well, what does everyone think? We have a consensus to have them at least move ahead with, okay. Ken, it looks like we have a consensus for the staff to move ahead with that and then present it to us at our next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You have the cell tower site, correct?
We hired years ago a consultant to shop all of our locations, public lands, to build a cell tower, to hopefully generate revenue for the township, and never able to put a deal together. Enough coverage from a cell tower standpoint that he said there's no market.
All I have for tonight, thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to Public Works Committee. Commissioner Lees.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we're talking about problem areas, well, first, I'd like to thank President Zipple for recognizing the Public Works Department, along with the other emergency responders who are here tonight. Sometimes the Public Works employees get lost in situations like this when it comes time to thank the first responders, but just like the police, fire companies, public, and EMS, the Public Works employees are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They often spend holidays or New Year's plowing snow. They spend the entire night during item making sure all the traffic signals are working, clearing debris from the roads, and checking in on township infrastructure such as bridges and buildings. Although the township building did experience some flooding in the basement, it was nothing compared to what some of our residents experienced at other towns throughout the county, especially Horsham and Upper Dublin. I had the honor of walking the Anthony Drive neighborhood over this past weekend, checking on residents in my ward. I did bring some portable sump pumps just in case people needed help getting things pumped out of their basements, and fortunately, most of it had already been done by the time I came around. These residents were hit hard, and the Public Works Department has provided dumpsters to assist in the cleanup. While talking with those residents, some concerns came up that I want to make public. Several of the residents asked if there was any possibility of dredging the creek back there. I know they're telling me that the EPA is trying to protect a breed of turtles back there or something, so they're not allowing us to dredge the creek, and I don't know if that's the actual case or not, but they want to see about what the feasibility of dredging the creek is. I had another resident question if we could put up a seawall, a concrete wall to help kind of prevent the floodwaters from coming up the creek, from the creek, to the houses to help protect them. And I've also had residents ask about the feasibility of either FEMA or PEMA buying out their homes. So I wanted to address that while we're talking about it. Also, the homeowner we helped get short-term housing last year during Isaias once again completely flooded out. Our staff is setting up a meeting with our state elected officials to hopefully secure funding to purchase this property and prevent any future losses while providing the homeowner with relief and peace of mind. Again, I'd like to thank our Public Works Department for all the work they do throughout the storm and what they do every day.
Well said, Public Works.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Greg, for identifying that, highlighting that.
Is there any type of drive set up to help the residents, clothing drives, appliance drive, anything at all to help them get their?
When I was talking to residents, I said if they need something to let me know, and that we would facilitate a drive, either for manpower to help them clean out their house, or if we needed to do funding to get them food, clothing, whatever needs they have.
Something comes up to help out, so.
And if anybody I didn't get a chance to talk to this past weekend, if you're watching now, if you need that, please let me know. Reach out to me, glees@hatfield.org, and let me know, and we'll set it up. Also, while we're talking about it, the county has relief set up as well. If you go to the county website and you hashtag IDA, it'll give you the number, an 800 number that you can call to get the damage recorded. I know our fire marshal, Mike McCann, was out documenting damage for the storm. It also needs to be reported to the county. And then there's also relief funds available. The federal government's going to be giving the state and the county funds. So that will help with allaying the cost of removing drywall and carpet and damaged furniture and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm done, sir.
All right, great. Thank you. We're going to move on to Parks and Recreation Committee. Commissioner Zimmerman.
September, we've got story time again. The featured book is The Magic School Bus Rides the Wind. $5 and includes a storybook and activity kits. Children read activity kits individually or do so as a family. Registered participants can pick up their books and activity kits between September 7th and the 24th. Mail pictures of the family reading and completed activities to storybook@hatfield.org by September 25th to be included in our Storytime series. Exercise, we've got Fit Zumba on Sundays, starting on the 12th through October 24th, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the School Road Park Amphitheater, $50 a person. Yoga on Thursday, starting the 23rd to October 28th. It's in the evening, 7 to 7:45, also in the amphitheater, $60 a person. Ready Set Medicare Seminar, Thursday, October 21st, 6:30 to 8:30 here in the administration building in the community room. And
You go, chief.
that's free, yeah.
On it.
And for the youngsters, American Red Cross Babysitting Course, Saturday, November 6th, 9 to 3, here in the building, $65, ages 11 to 15. Upcoming this Saturday, we have Dog-a-Palooza from 10 to 3 at the Aquatic Center. You can pre-register for that on the website, or you can complete the paperwork and pay at the door. $5 for a real person and $10 for a real dog. For Oktoberfest, we're glad we're going to be able to have that this year. That'll be in October, the first Saturday, the 2nd, from 11 to 3, School Road Park. We'll have music, games, inflatables, food trucks, vendors, and more. You can visit hatfield.org for more information. And thanks to sponsors, Vinny's Pizzarama, Liberty Urgent Care, and Harleysville Bank.
All right. Only one item for public safety tonight. It's kind of part and parcel of what I think Commissioner Andrus is going to mention in the Finance Committee. Because our pensions cover our uniformed officers, we have some good news there. Vice President Rogers and I sit on the Pension Committee, and like I said, that oversees uniform and non-uniform employees. And so 10 years ago, that police pension was only 71.5% funded. And so over the last few years, Bob and I have sat on the committee together and the commissioners working together. We made a couple of tweaks to the investment plan with the assistance of the pension advisors, which is Univest. Specifically, what we did is we moderately increased the amount invested in equities and moderately decreased the amount invested in fixed income, such as bonds. Not very aggressively, still very much considered a conservative approach as consistent as per our financial advisors, but that small tweak as of January 1st of 2021, Bob and I are happy to announce that the police and also the non-uniform pension is 100% funded. I've not heard that at other townships, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't been paying close enough attention, but like I said, 10 years ago, it was 71.5% funded, and now 100% funded, and we're very pleased to announce that. So, Jerry, I'm sorry if I stepped on your toes, but since it kind of crossed over between two different areas, I thought I'd mention it.
Mr. President, before Commissioner Andrews gets going, that's the first time that's happened here in Hatfield in decades, several decades. I haven't even been able to go far enough back to see when this happened before, so, in a long time. Sorry, Commissioner.
Feel free to share that with your...
Based on that, I'm going to resign this evening.
There goes our pension.
Maybe there it is. There you go. Pension's gone, and maybe that announcement wasn't such a wise decision.
Now half funded.
That's everything for public safety. Finance Committee, Commissioner Andrus.
I had to follow on the heels of Commissioner Ziffeld. Thank you, Mr. President, for the introduction and for the efforts on the Pension Committee. When the pension investments are performing well, it makes our job much easier come budget time, which is next. Every year around this time, we have an obligation, or we approve a resolution that establishes the pension obligations for the following year. It's the first large piece to the budget puzzle every year. This year, the first piece looks a lot better, based on what you just said. Hopefully make our budget process much easier. MMO, which stands for Minimum Municipal Obligation, is based on the actuarial valuation performed once every 2 years. The latest valuation was based on January 1st of this year, 2021. Both the police and non-uniform pension plans experienced double-digit investment gains in both 2019 and 2020. Gains were significantly higher than what was assumed in the plan. The township's obligation for 2022 will decrease significantly. Last year, the township's total obligation was $1.2 million, roughly 10% of the budget. Keep in mind that our total budget is only $12 million. so it's pretty significant, definitely good for us. Township obligation for 2022 will be roughly $600,000, a decrease of 50%. Great news, and will provide us with some flexibility to increase our reserve fund, improve infrastructure, and make needed capital purchases. We rarely get news like this when it comes to the cost of the pensions, and make the best of the opportunity.
Right, great news. Okay, we're going to move on to the township staff reports, manager's report. Aaron?
Thanks, Mr. President. Just a few housekeeping items. Our fall schedule, just so everyone is on the same page. Following, we're meeting regularly in September and October. Then we add the budget and goals meeting that Commissioner Andrews has talked about over the last few months. All these meetings are at 7:30, except for that budget and goals meeting will be at 6 o'clock on October 20th. Then the board combined, due to the holiday schedule in November, December, combine those two meetings, have one meeting in November and December. All this will be on the website and advertised accordingly. This is just a reminder. Also, as far as public meetings go, this month in this room, we'll be hosting a town hall meeting on September 29th at 6:30 to 8:30. We encourage all residents. We'll begin to promote this more on social media over the next few weeks. It's an open forum to discuss the Liberty Bell Trail route. This will be a meeting we're sharing with Hatfield Borough. This meeting will also be taking place in Upper Gwynedd, in Franconia, and North Wales, all of our municipal partners that we're going through this process with to determine the best route for the Liberty Bell Trail. So a lot of public outreach is involved anytime you get a grant. This will be one meeting. There'll be representatives at Rocktoberfest as well, trying to get feedback from residents. There are websites and Facebook pages that we've been promoting and will continue to promote, looking for feedback from residents. The entire process is very public, and the feedback is essential in determining how we're going to figure this out over the next few years. So please come out anytime from 6:30 to 8:30. It's not a formal meeting. There'll be consultants here from Pennsylvania Environmental Council as well as Michael Baker, and there'll be boards set up throughout that you can come in whenever you can throughout those 2 hours and look around, ask questions, give feedback, and all of that will be important as the consultant continues on. One other thing, Commissioners, I thought it'd be newsworthy to share. We've talked about this topic several times in this room, fireworks. This morning, I had the opportunity to speak on a Zoom meeting with Senator Yaw, who was the sponsor of the law 3 years ago that allowed consumer fireworks to be legal. And we've dealt with some of the repercussions of that, and we've discussed that in this room many times. The commissioners passed a resolution to encourage it to be amended or repealed. I spoke this morning on behalf of the Pennsylvania Municipal League because all the towns are they're having similar experiences. So we asked Senator Yaw if he'd consider amending to allow local government control and local government to regulate the fireworks, and asked for a few other things. And Senator Yaw was very passionate about fireworks. We found out he's from Central Pennsylvania. He's a veteran, and I'm sure he serves his district well. So we had a good discussion. We don't know where it'll go, but we're doing what we can, and hopefully there'll be a little bit of a budge on his end to allow local governments to have just a little more control in saying where and when this makes sense for their own communities. So we'll see. It was a good opportunity, and we'll see where it goes. Commissioners, that's all I have for you tonight.
All right, thank you. Solicitor's report.
Nothing to report tonight.
Okay, that's good news when we hear that. Citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments? Do either of you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a real quick comment here. You know, tonight we had our first responders here and stuff like that. And, you know, even though this person isn't a first responder, she's the first one to reach out to the township and tell them what a great job they did. She always has that positive view on how we're running the government here in Hatfield Township. I want to thank her for that. I'm not going to mention her name. I'm not going to embarrass her, but I really appreciate those emails.
Thank you.
He's very positive. Yeah, I know, we don't, not everybody does that. So anyway, thank you very much.
Mr. President, I have one comment when
Oh, sure.
we're done here. While I was out walking around Anthony Drive this weekend, I had several residents ask me, how come the fire companies don't come pump out our basements anymore? I remember them pumping out our basements years ago when we had an issue. So here's the deal for those who don't know in the township. About 20 years ago, one of the fire companies was pumping out a basement and the wall collapsed. They turned around and sued the fire company. So now, because of liability, the fire companies will not pump out your basements. So if you are live in an area where you are prone to being flooded, I highly recommend that you get a generator and a backup submersible pump that you can drop in and be able to pump out your own basement. Okay, because the fire companies are not going to come pump you out. It's not 1980s anymore. Unfortunately, somebody sued the fire companies and they ruined it for everybody. So that's where we're at. Okay.
Lawyers, I know, we're looking at each other.
Look at the time. Very nice meeting today.
And Bob, you're not mentioning Tina's name, I thought was appropriate.
I agree. I wouldn't mention Tina's name either, Bob. Just saying.
Thank you, Tina. All right, any citizens' comments? All right, well, thank you. All right, with that, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lees,
Second.
second by Commissioner Andrus. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. See you in 2 weeks.